It's an amazing landscape. All of you should visit this place. And these rocks were radiating the time and space to me energetically. I don't know how else to explain it. It was emanating that it has witnessed time itself, from the beginning of the formation of Earth.
Hello there. My name is Kit Rackley, my pronouns are they, them, and this is Coffee and Geography. The aim of the show is to get to know, explore and celebrate the diverse and intersectional range of people on this rock we call home and their love and passions of it. We'll find out why guests identify as geographers, and if they don't exactly, we'll have fun exploring all the myriad of ways that connects their life to geography. So, pour your favourite brew, get cosy and listen in. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe and follow us on Twitter at CoffeeJogPod. Off we go.
Hello everybody, welcome to Coffee and Geography. It is an absolute pleasure, privilege and delight that joining me from New Delhi in India is Adil Hussain. Welcome Adil, thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for inviting me in Coffee and Geography. Both are my favorites, so thank you.
I'm looking forward to this. So to introduce you, Adil is an award-winning actor in theatre and film, appearing in shows such as Othello, A Play in Black and White, The Life of Pi, and Season 3 of Star Trek Discovery. I'm a Trekkie, so that's pretty good for me. Adil says he is in love with acting and is always struggling all the way to act better. He says, and I quote, "I fail miserably, still found a way to live with myself in spite of multiple failures." And I'm going to we'll talk a bit later, because I think talking about failure and accepting it is like really important for us as educators anyway. So I definitely will come back to you on that one, Adil. But we're here drinking a tea or a coffee. So what have you got in front of you at the moment?
Tea, actually, because I was busy doing something and my wife, she had been very kind and she said, "I made some tea for you." I was like, "Oh, I was about to make coffee." She said, "No, I just made tea." I said, "Okay," because I'm talking to Kate about geography and coffee, and but now I have some tea in my hand, but very Indian tea. You see,
okay,
tea.
Oh wow, that looks lovely.
It's a very special way. We brew the tea, we boil it in milk and water. We let it boil for some time, and then it takes a color, and then half a cup of tea, half a cup of water for 1 cup of tea. And then we boil it with cinnamon powder and cloves powder and a bit of ginger powder. We let it boil for some time, and then we put 1 tablespoonful of tea for 1 cup of tea, and then we let it brew and turn the color of the tea turns this dark, and then we add some sugar and drink. It's fantastic.
Now, of course, being British, we're like tea, and like
I know,
and our colonial influence and disruption was kind of brought. But no, listen, everybody, we have to take a back seat and say, you folks over there in the East, you're the tea kings. It's coming all from you. You need to show that. That almost sounds like ceremony, the way that you brew your tea, rather than us. It's just dunk the tea bag in from our blend from all over the world, pour the milk in, off we go. Where did the leaves come from? Are they local, or do you get them from a shop? Where did you source the leaves from?
It's very interesting that you asked me that, because the leaves, most of them come from my home state where I'm born, Assam. You get nice. Assam tea in Norwich, I'm sure. And I'm born very close to tea gardens. And I grew up drinking tea that we produce in Assam. They are sold in the States. So I tasted the best tea produced from Assam in Amsterdam. And I said, "No, this is not Assam tea." And she was completely flabbergasted and said, "What are you talking about? This is Assam tea. Why would I lie?" I said, "I'm from Assam, and I should tell you what Assam tea looks like." Then, because I couldn't recognize the leaves, because I used to get the dust part of it, which is the leftover, And then when I smelt it, and I was like, "Yeah, this is Assam tea." So this is from Assam. most of the tea are sold in India are from my home state.
Yes, so you've been talking about that you're from Assam and a town called Goalpara, and and the other thing we like to talk to people about is their sense of place, how it's formed their identity. And for those people who don't know where Assam is, this is the one of the regions to the northeast of Bangladesh. You know, as India comes over Bangladesh, and Assam is in that little bit there. So you're in New Delhi at the moment, and you're from Assam. You spent a bit of time there. How has all this developed you as a person, your sense of identity? What parts of Assam stays with you? How much has New Delhi formed? And of course, you've travelled all around the world doing bits and bobs. So how has that all come together to form Adil Hussain today?
I wish I knew to explain. Assam is probably the biggest part of my foundation of anything, for emotional foundation. And if we can use this controversial or very ambiguous word, psychological foundation, and also the rhythm of the body, the choices that I make in terms of music and sound, which soothes me or which annoys me in both ways. Because it's a very culturally alive and diverse and vibrant place, and it has got an amazing variety of folk music, classical music, dance, and vocal music, instrumental music. There are several kinds of instruments that are specifically played in that region, which you will not find in the rest of the country or the world even. Theatrically, there are a lot of theater performances influenced by the Western theater, of course. And also there are a lot of amazingly rich literature. So all these had shaped my understanding of the world, which came in very early in my system, in my human system, since my childhood. So I would say that the foundation of my general worldview, which unconsciously, subconsciously, if we can use those Freudian terms, had been sort of filled with all these amazing things that I had been exposed to right from my childhood. Delhi is the other part, which I would say that the foundation and the solidity of the foundation which I had been shaped or carved to a finer, if at all it has gotten fine. I'm just saying that, it has gotten finer with the kind of teachers that I met at the drama school and the people I met and books that I read, theater that I was exposed to and seeing world theater and world music, live performances in those days when I studied here. Of course, now it is available online, anywhere, but the curated version of the classical, Western classical music and dance and theater and Eastern classical music and dance and theater and art, history of art and all that we studied in Delhi. And the capital city, being a capital city, it is sort of constantly visited by the great performances of different kinds of performances, from puppetry to exhibitions, art exhibition, modern art and ancient art and all that. So I would say that it's all mixed up, but I cannot deny the fact that the foundation was so well laid. People, those who don't like me, will disagree, but I guess people, those who love me and like me, they will agree to it. And Assam has played, and especially my hometown, it is in the border between Bangladesh and West Bengal, which is the other state, which speaks a different language. And because of this kind of geographical placement where the town is, I was lucky to be influenced by both the cultures. not both, three different cultures, the food-wise and linguistically, literature-wise, and music and sound, and songs and all that, and also landscape that played a very important role. Landscape of Assam is so green, and it reminded me when I went to the UK. Dorset is in terms of, if we don't look at the sea, and if you're in inland, and the greenery, or Wales. When I went to Wales, I saw this green, an amazing green. So that kind of soothing color, and the fruits, and the leafy vegetables, and all different kinds of trees and fruits, and flora and fauna, and the sound, and the soothing humidity. It keeps your body supple, and it keeps you your inner emotional being, which is influenced by the climatic condition. And I deeply believe in that climatic condition gave birth to the kind of people that we are, or influenced the kind of people that we are. And it definitely, topography and geography and climate, all these are part of geography, of course. Climate had sort of given birth to different kinds of melody, how they move on the terrain of that place, the rhythm, the length of the rhythm, and the kind of sound that it produces. All these are definitely part of the talk that Kate. This is the first time in my life I'm talking to someone about this, because nobody asked me about it, and you're a geographer, and that and it will make sense to someone who understands geography.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. First of all, I mean, for those who don't know, and I'm not sure how it works in the Indian education system, and I know you said that you've got an undergraduate in geography, but in the UK, geography is very interdisciplinary. So we don't just teach about where places are or what they're like. We also teach about all the human and physical dynamics. So it could be anything from plate tectonics, it could be the weather and climate, it could be development, it could be immigration, but all those things.
Right.
And so, but the trouble is, because we're so spread thin over so many amazing topics, sometimes we do get a bit reductionist. So you say you're on, Goalpara is on the banks of the Brahmaputra, which goes in. So there is lots of geography teachers that talk about how the Ganges and the Brahmaputra, confluence into and cause all the culture in Bangladesh and the trouble with flooding. But we don't think about. And then we talk about, the upper reaches of the Brahmaputra. Of course, they cut down trees and that causes flood. Well, no, it's a bit more complex than that. There's and you're talking about up there, where the Brahmaputra comes into Bangladesh. It's fascinating.
Yes, it is.
Oh, okay. A question that came to my head. I was going to come to this a little bit more later, because a guest that we had previously, Joanna Mendes, she's from Portugal. She now lives in Exeter in the United Kingdom. She works for the UK Met Office. It's a very lovely person. And she is very into Indian culture, particularly Indian music and yoga. So the question I want to ask you then, because you were talking about your body being supple and looking within, and I used to do a bit of yoga myself. Would you therefore say that the environment that you grew up in to make your body supple, make your look inside and things like that, is that why yoga started where it is in your part of the world?
Yes and no. I think, I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not an expert on yoga. The word yoga, the way the Western people understand mostly, is about the kind of physical exercises that are done.
Yeah.
That's the rudimentary part of yoga. That's about preparing the body physically to take on supple and subtle and nuanced energies if it flows. So that yoga, the word means union. And union means the way that I studied and understood a little bit of it, and I practice it. That is union of the physical body and the subtle bodies. So the yoga, the kind of physical exercises which is included in this entire process of yoga, is to prepare the body so that the body is stable and can handle endurance and can build stamina in order to proceed towards the higher goals. The higher goal is to unify oneself with the divine energies. So that's the highest goal.
Yeah.
So the question that you asked me about, is it part of the yogic process or yogic tradition or culture that people are supple? I think probably it is in a way, because the kind of lifestyle which were led by Indian people, and still apart from the fact that the Western way of living has come in very, very big way, like chairs and tables and the Western system of commode, where you sit and do your, early morning defecation. These things have changed our lifestyle and also created a lot of trouble in terms of bowel movement. And bowel movement in India had been the first thing that you do when you wake up in the morning, every day.
Right.
If your defecation hasn't happened, then you are not well. So every morning, every day, it is imperative that we must go to the toilet and, clear our bowel. That is in a sitting position, which is the squatting position, which is known in the West as the Eastern system of toilet, is not there anymore. It is important that we understand this, because the things that we eat, because yoga is connected to, it's a wholesome understanding of the physical system and also the mental and emotional and psychic system. So it is not only the physical body, but the physical body plays a very important role in how you feel. Your gut bacteria, decide a lot of things, the way, your mood, how the mood feels. Nowadays, the science has come up with fantastic studies and experiments.
Right. Yeah.
So, yes, the food, like the way we used to eat food, we would always sit on the floor and would eat, never on a chair and table. And I didn't grow up eating food, lunch or dinner or breakfast, sitting on a table and a chair, And so the sitting down on the floor and getting up is itself is a very important exercise that the body could do. The invention of chair is one of the worst things which has happened according to my understanding, and which is being proved slowly. That you are being asked, those who are on a sitting job, they're asked, every 30 minutes or 40 minutes, you should, stand up and walk around so that you are healthy enough. Because the psoas muscle, which is related to, it needs expansion and stretches in order for you to not get into depression, which is very interesting understanding. And I was reading about it. I was like, how come our ancient, ancestors knew it? But anyway, so yes, it is part of the yoga is very part of the, everyday activity in this part of the world.
There's two things that came to my mind there. One is that I immediately adjusted my posture. And the second thing is that we had to, for this job, working from home a little bit more, of course, we've had to undergo training about proper posture and taking screen breaks and things like that. So we need to get back to those kind of ways of considering our body, I believe. There's a lot of stuff you talked about, which is so fascinating, about yoga is one of those things which we know has been westernized quite a fair bit, and it's a window into Indian culture, but it has been appropriated in a way from a Western point of view. And one of the things that geography educators do, not with any nefarious intent at all, but we are trying to address this now with like the decolonizing movement over here, is that because time is precious and we're so rushed to get through content, but we also want to have the kids engaged, what we tend to do is that we use popular culture to teach about place. So, for example, I used to do this wonderful unit which was all about London and Mumbai, and not just comparing the two places, but also exploring how they're interlinked, the things that people in London might be able to learn from people in Mumbai and how vice versa. But one of the things that me and a lot of other educators done was when we talked about, for example, Davari and other settlements such as that in Mumbai, we would use the first opening scene of Slumdog Millionaire, for example, because it's popular culture, it's well produced, And it's a window into that. So the question I really want to ask you, Adil, is from someone who works, in the industry to do with popular culture, is what do you think is the benefits of bringing popular culture into the education system? But what do you think we need to be cautious about? Because I know, speaking to enough people, that opening sequence of Slumdog Millionaire may necessarily not be representative of even that small little piece of India. So what's your words of wisdom on that?
I think there are great advantages and disadvantages at the same time of popular culture. I'm constantly navigating that. The popular culture makes reductionist views of any situation, or like, for example, Slumdog Millionaire, in a way, it's a very, very well-made film, I must say. And also it represents a reality of India. And I would not deny that at all. But at the same time, the Bollywood, on the other hand, does the opposite job. It just shows the gloss and glitter part of the
right.
middle class and upper middle class families, family dramas and all that.
Sure.
And nowadays they have copied quite a lot of Hollywood style, action thrillers and that spy thriller, and I'm being part of them as well. At the same time, what popular culture does, like I was as probably you have read about my stand-up comedy stint in my life from 1985 to 1990, almost 6 years, or maybe 5.5 years to 6 years. We used to use a lot of popular culture in order to bring it to the surface and put it in a narrative, and that narrative was influenced by the popular Bollywood films or Hindi film industry, as I would say. Yes. In order for people to make it palatable and easier to grasp. We used to do a lot of political satire and satire on the cultural activities in Assam and neighborhood states. And we would criticize the government, but we will bring in Bollywood actors, we'll imitate them, and we'll talk about the socio-political situation in Assam. We take on one subject. So, and the audience members were like, sometimes it would cross 10,000 live audience, and not less than ever 5,000 people. So, and those people would constantly be there waiting for us to listen to us. And they would be going home smiling, but thinking as well what we said. Right. So this becomes a very, very important genre, I would say, in order for people, those who are not much of a thinker, they're not much of they don't engage much with critical thinking, but yet they have something to, if I can say, use the word food for thought. So that is the advantage of popular culture, I would say. But the trouble is that popular culture also tries to iron out all the nuances. Iron out all the subtlest aspects of human activities, human society, and human expression. And that has its own downside because it becomes very black and white. And the gray part, it's like most of the superhero films, either they are bad guys or good guys. And it is also changing slowly, the gray guys, and but thankfully it is changing. And I'm sure that evolutionary process of human society is a very slow thing, painfully slow, and we are evolving. So probably we have to do both, but with a lot of responsibility when we are making. It's a very interesting thing. One of my teachers who very beautifully said that the films which are coming out of, even from the British film industry or Hollywood or Indian film industry, they're very crafty people. They're extremely good at making all these series that I'm watching, including famous Game of Thrones and all the other series that those who are coming out on the different OTT platforms. They're very well made. Like he likened it to like the vulture, which can fly very high with extremely skilled eyes, but looking at the lower depths of humanity.
Nice. I like that.
So instead of looking at the beauty of nature, I'm not saying we should only talk about beauty, but also the contrasting existence of, and in this contrast, There is the concept of like there cannot be night without day. There cannot be day without night. And all the opposites has its, significance. And we must find a way to tell stories which allows people to sort of take a macro view of their own lives, or or the society, or the nation, or the world politics, or the geopolitics, all that, and uplift their lives instead of pushing them to the micro existence and push them further to their misery.
Yeah.
That this is life is all about, instead of that there is another way to look at life, which yoga probably, not the physical part of the yoga that we were talking about, but the entire yogic system is talking about. Yes, in misery there is beauty as well. There could be beauty. Like, for example, the Chinese proverb which says that the day you can relish the most unpalatable vegetable roots, you have arrived somewhere.
Yes, I think I've heard that one. I wasn't going to bring this up because I was trying to deliberately avoid this. It's a good thing, not a bad thing. But a prime example of popular culture where nuance has been tried to be brought in, and I wouldn't say there's been a pushback or a backlash, but there's been resistance to it because it gets people to think, is we got in contact initially because I messaged you on Twitter after seeing your first appearance on Star Trek Discovery. And I'll say it to you now because I'm speaking to you, but your performance in that when you first came on the scene was absolutely beautiful and touching, and just the emotion on your face, because we were all going through that issue. We were all isolated. We were all unable to see our friends. That was brought to the extreme, of course, by the writers of Star Trek Discovery by putting you in the 32nd century and all those kind of things. But then the whole narrative about hope, about connection all came out. And then for me as a trans person, that scene, and spoilers for anybody who's not yet seen season 3 of Star Trek Discovery, that scene where Adira comes out to Paul Stamets about being non-binary. And all of that was beautiful because they were trying to build in a nuance, the fact that there's so much more to humanity than just, as you just said, the bad guy, the good guy. There's so much more to humanity than just the binary of, there's non-binary and everything like that. And it was just so beautiful. And
yes,
that's great writing. And Adil, I just want to say on behalf of everybody, I'm so pleased that you could have been a part of that moment in what I would thought was television history anyway. And you've got another film coming up. I think if I'm right in thinking it's in post-production, it's called Footprints on Water, so a British Indian film. And I think geographers might want to be interested in this when this comes out, because it's all about an illegal immigrant father who's in the UK trying to search for his missing daughter. So there's not very much and I know you're under embargoes to talk about things when they're not being released, but it's just another example of how popular culture is bringing these things to the surface, enabling, as you say, a more nuance, a more of a critical thinking process, which we need in education, especially with our young people as they start to enter life.
I can talk about a little bit of this film, but
only enough that won't get you into trouble.
No, yeah, I completely understand that, and it's in my mind. What I wanted to say is that if you look at it from migration point of view, humans have migrated across the globe according to certain studies, DNA studies, which was a massive study. From Africa, and it went upwards. So this migration is a continuous thing, and which happens amongst the animals, and we are probably more intelligent animals. I doubt sometimes, though, but probably we are. Resources played a very important role in human migration. And greed as well, like the Britishers colonized India and rest of the world, and had a huge empire. The European countries, including France and Spain and Portugal and the Dutchies, they all went in, for resources to make them wealthier, to have more comfortable life. So similarly, a country like India, we have 1.3 billion population, and because of the political system and the lack of integrity amongst most politicians in India, the resources are not equally divided, and people would like to seek out for better lives, and which is a very normal human tendency. And I think the story of Footprints in Water on water is that of that. It's about human migration. I have witnessed myself, amazing stories, and so this family, they go to the UK in, looking for a better and comfortable life, and then falls into the hands of the fraudulent company, and then daughter goes missing, and how the father could not go to the police because he's illegal migrant, and he looks for his daughter. In the process, we see the plight and miseries of the people who are not documented, or those who are not in the system. And this is a human creation, the boundaries and the political boundaries of the geographical, the division of geography and all that. And people would break that because that's unnatural, completely unnatural. If you look at it from the historical point of view, that people have migrated freely. Animals, they do migrate freely. The birds migrate freely. And we don't. We are not allowed to unless somebody stamps me a visa, and quite often rejected. If I have to go to, I haven't been rejected yet because probably I had legitimate amount of money in the bank that I was not rejected.
Right.
I went to the UK to study first time in 1993, and I got a scholarship, and I went and I was given visa. Till today, my visas were not rejected. So this film is about that, where the misery of and the trauma a father especially, goes through, and psychological trauma the father goes through while looking for his daughter who has gone missing for 4 days, and what are the tremendously, tragic situations and predicaments which the daughter has to go through. And we haven't spoken about that much generally in world cinema. So this is a film that I'm looking forward to watch it.
Wonderful. Yeah, and I'm so glad I could give it a plug, because I think by the time that this podcast episode gets released, maybe the film will already be out. So I'm hoping that people listening to this will then go and seek that out. So yeah, that's fantastic, Adil. Thank you. Sticking with we're all being part of nature as humans. I mean, obviously, as a geographer, I strongly believe in that, and we should be free to move around like the birds and everything like that. And you're right, it is a normal animal instinct to migrate to find a better place for yourself. Now, you did a wonderful interview back in 2012 for the 9th Dubai International Film Festival. And for the listeners, I will play a clip here.
When you read a script, you always think, oh, this is going to be filmed. So you don't know how. When one thing you know that is Ang Lee who's making it, so it will be great.
Of course.
But after watching the film, when Barack Obama says elegant proof of God, this is such an Indian way, not of Barack Obama, but the film, that generally what I have grown up with the stories like, that nature takes care of you to make you believe in God.
Sure.
In so many ways, nature would put you in situations where you are cornered like that, and then you surrender. Okay, I don't know anything. I thought I knew everything, and my little mind thinks that, and finally, when everything disappears in front of you, there's no way that you can do something for yourself.
Then you revisit your ideals.
You revisit. You look within.
You reflect.
Or you look up. Whatever you say. In India, we believe in looking within. Looking up is just a sort of a ritual, but looking within is the real journey.
Absolutely.
So that was you there talking about looking within and connects with nature. Adil, are you able to describe to us a time where maybe you've had that experience with nature, where nature has made you look within and think? I mean, you've alluded to it already by the way that you've been talking, but has nature done that for you? Where really, really gone introspective on yourself?
Immensely, significantly. and miraculously so. I don't know how else to describe it. I just would give you an example.
Sure.
I was lucky to be on a river island for 3.5 years, living in a hut without electricity and running water next to a running river, and in the wilderness in southern part of India. And because of my search for a better way to embody characters or roles, rather, I prefer to use the word role than character. To understand, because as I said, that the physical body is the most palpable thing and most tangible thing that we sense, our five senses and the physical body. So I wanted to understand this instrument through which I express myself while I am acting. To understand that, I was it's a long story. So I went to this river island, and few of my earlier students and some students from different parts of the world, including from Germany, from Denmark, France, and New Zealand, America, Austria. They came and we started sort of working together in order to understand. So in one of the activities that we did was to connect with the five elements, and especially water, fire, nature. When I say nature, means the rocks and the earth, basically, and wind and the sky. And we used a technique from the Hawaiian shamanism called grokking. It's not an English word, but this is a technique to embody the other. And that other could be anything or any idea. Mostly it's about a physical thing outside of you. How to embody that, how to bring it into your system and to become one with it. So we worked a lot, and there are hundreds of stories. If I start writing a book, probably it will be not a trilogy, but probably 10 volumes if I have the time one day and patience to write. So one of the stories I remember that I was working myself with a jackfruit tree, and I was, after 4 hours of uninterrupted work, which led me to a very deep space of consciousness and solitude and silence and quietude. I realized this. I mean, this sounds pretty not very. I don't know how to say, not very profound, but the experience was so profound. The only thing which came to my mind after 4 hours, that, oh my God, this tree is my greatest grandmother, means not grandmother or grandmother, but the primordial grandmother.
Right.
And who is ready to feed me, and who is ready to allow me to climb, to smell, to feel, to hug, to cut, to chop, to eat the fruits, to make anything I would like. So sacrificing, so giving, so an all-embracing grandmother, greatest, as I said, the primordial grandmother is willing to sacrifice itself for my well-being. And that wasn't that I'm trying to sort of put words into my experience, but the experience was so palpable, extremely real. And I just silently hugged the tree and stayed there for I don't know how long, and that was one of my greatest insights into it's not about the tree only, it's about all elements. It's with the water it happened, with the wind it happened, with the rocks. And the rocks in that area where I stayed, you should probably talk to your students to find out for themselves, that I was told that these rocks are the most ancient rocks on the planet Earth, because when Earth was in a molten state, this area and one of the areas which finally went to Africa, Gondwana land separated from India and went to Africa, are the oldest formation of rocks. It's 3.6 billion years old. And I didn't know that. For years 2 years I spent, I didn't know that. But what was mesmerizing was that I used to sit on a particular space and eat my lunch and dinner and breakfast. And I used to look at one of the rocks, which is right across the dining room, which was an open dining room. There was no walls because it was a hut and a patio. And I used to keep looking at the rock all the time, and I never got bored. So I was like, what is this all about? What is this rock all about? Why am I looking at this rock and I don't get bored every day? For 3.5 years, I stayed there. Then after doing some studies, I realized that this rock and all the rocks across that area, 70 square kilometers, these rocks are almost as if someone has put one rock as big as like 5-story building had been put on top of the other. And, someone has put it on top of the other, all separate. It's an amazing landscape. All of you should visit this place. And these rocks were radiating the time and space to me energetically. I don't know how else to explain it. It was emanating that it has witnessed time itself, from the beginning of the formation of Earth. So, I don't know. There are, again, hundreds of stories like that of all the participants, those who had been there with me. And it is amazing how beautiful the experience is.
Right. Oh, well, you rose to the challenge of trying to explain that very, very well, because there is so many things where you just can't explain that feeling,
No,
and I think us as a human race need to come to accept that sometimes the feeling that you get and the connection that you get that can't be put into words, needs to be embraced.
Unless, of course, you are Shakespeare.
Unless, of course, you're Shakespeare.
Unless, of course, you're Shakespeare, yeah. He found a way to explain and describe with these amazing cluster of words that I had been lucky to feast on them playing Othello for 10 years.
Well, I tell you what, Adil, you also do a fantastic job through your acting, the way that you communicate sentiment and feeling, just by your actions, and so there's so many multiple ways of doing that, not just through the spoken language. And it's interesting how I've got to. You're the third. I think you're the 13th or 14th person I've spoken to for this podcast. I never knew it was going to go this far, Adil, to be honest. But what I've now started to get is that there are threads appearing between my guests, even though we're separated by so much of the world. So we were talking about language with another guest, and we were talking about how, for example, some indigenous populations in the Western United States and Canada have multiple words for tree, because a tree can be, can function in so many different ways. It can mean different things to different people. So whereas in English, it's just, perhaps you just got, seed, sapling and tree. Whereas in this culture, they could have a word for what the tree does. So how it nurtures the earth, how it stops flooding, how that could be used as a resource. And it's just, I didn't study language to that depth, but I tell you what, it's something that I probably would do if I ever changed tack and changed focus. So it's a shame to move on because this is so great. We'll have to set up a second chat sometime in the future, Adil, because there's so much we can carry on with. So there's one thing I really do want to chat to you about, though, because I found it really profound that you put it in the description when you came on. And I really do want teachers and students to hear this discussion. And that is, in your bio, you said when you were talking about making mistakes and failures and things like that, you said about managing failure and things like that. It's like getting mini heart attacks, seeing myself on screen with multiple mistakes. I must say that I have gathered the courage and almost call myself brave warrior fighting my way to stand up and act again. And the way that the education system, particularly United Kingdom in Western culture, set up is that it's so geared towards passing your exams, making sure you get onto the next course and things like that. And there is such a fear of failure, not just with the students, but with the teachers as well. I used to be crushed when I felt I failed one of my students. Maybe they were estimated to get a grade A, but they got a grade B or C. I felt crushed. So I really, really want you to talk a bit more about what you've done there in order how you kind of use failure as fuel, as a tool, and how you use that to kind of improve your acting. What words of wisdom and encouragement can you give to teachers and students?
Well, there is it's a wonderful conversation I had with someone. It's on YouTube. If you go and if you type probably Adil on failure, there is I think an hour-long conversation if anybody wants to, look at that. But the thing is that I probably the idea of success would define what failure is. And for me, the idea of success was never to become known or never to pass an exam or never to prove. Probably I had something to prove to myself, not to anybody else. Probably, I'm not sure. I think that is very important in the beginning. But the trouble is that the society teaches us that success means this, and that. It has been categorically defined as passing exams and getting a job and blah, blah, blah. Or if you want to go in this line of, art and culture, then you have to be a known person. Success for me is about having a good night's sleep, without any kind of drugs or medicine, and feeling at peace. That is success for me. And I'm sure that this story had been told several times, or this is a good story if you can, if one can look at it again. I think it's never enough to repeat this story.
Yeah.
It is set in Indian situation, but I heard the stories in several parts of the world differently. But probably some of you haven't heard. So for the benefit of that, why not? So there's a fisherman sitting under a tree in India near the sea, and poor fisherman, and leaning on a coconut tree, and smoking a cigar, a homemade cigar. And a businessman who is very successful according to the social description or definition, came and asked, "What are you doing?" And the fisherman says, "Oh, I'm relaxing." "Oh, but it's only 8 o'clock in the morning. Why don't you go and work?" He said, "No, I woke up at 5 in the morning. I did my fishing, and I'm just now sitting and smoking a cigar and relaxing." "But why didn't you go again to the sea and, catch some more fish?" So the fisherman asked, "But why?" "Oh, then you can, get some more fish, and you can sell those fish, and you can become richer, and you can buy a bigger boat." And then fisherman asked him, "And then you can, use the bigger boat, catch more fish." And it continued like that, like till you are a huge merchant, fish merchant, and the fish merchant, and you can relax. The fisherman says, "But I'm already relaxing."
I love it.
So, you know what I mean? I'm relaxing and I'm having fun. What's your problem? Why don't? So I have as much as I need, and not to make my need bigger or larger. If one is happy with, with little things, because this is very important probably to make people understand as a part of their curriculum that physical comfort is not the ultimate thing that you should crave for.
Right.
Physical comfort is nice, it's important, but it's not the, if you have a house and lovely, because in India, it is very natural in our oral understanding, oral education, that happiness you do not go to, you must come from. It lies within, that means. It is within us. How we respond or react to the things outside makes us happy or miserable or at peace or irritable or angered or, outraged. So this knowledge, this wisdom rather than knowledge, this wisdom is ingrained in a lot of people. It is slowly fading because of several reasons. Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know if I made sense.
No, it's lovely. I had a slight delay responding because it just made me really, really think deep inside as well. And it's something that I have been doing quite often, for the last few years, is looking deep inside myself and finding where my true happiness comes from. And it's always been there. It's just recognizing it and see what it is. Adil, this is such a delightful conversation, but we do need to move on towards the end and wrap things up. So there's the last thing we need to do. And I'd love to keep in touch with you and talk again in the future anyway. But there's one last thing to do.
Sure.
And to connect every single guest in this podcast, what we do is that each guest comes up with a word for the next guest to try and link to the world, try and link to geography and things like that. So last guest I had was the wonderful Ellie Hopkins. She's better known as the Curious Geographer, and she does wonderful videos for teachers and students about lots of geography things and interviews. And she is a big fan of spy novels. When she was trying to think of a word to come up with to challenge you, Adil, to link to geography, she thought, well, okay, let's just go with the word spy. So what you've got to do, Adil, is before you come up with your word for the next guest, is that you've got 30 seconds to try and talk about spy or spies or whatever in a geographical way, in a geographical sense. So are you up for the challenge, Adil?
I'm not sure. I've never been challenged like that.
No, I don't think everybody is. Right. So whenever you're ready, and then I'll tell you when your time is up. So 30 seconds to talk about spy through a geographical lens, or spies.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, I think spying is a noble job if it is done with the intent of bettering human lives, and quite often, like the small, little child, they play, I spy with my eye. It is about observing things. It's about looking at details. It's about detecting nuances in life. And when it is misused by the government, it's different. But I think that it is it could be an extremely wonderful job.
The bell has cut you off right when we got into the podcast. What a perfect answer. I think you nailed it. That was excellent. I was thinking of the macro scale, but you went for the micro scale, and that was excellent. Good. Right. Adil, what would you like to give for our next guest? And they will do the same. So they will have 30 seconds to link to geography, a word or a topic of your choice.
Embodiment.
Right, embodiment. That would be really interesting. Okay, so Adil, is there anybody you would like to give a shout out? Well, I'll tell you what, I'll do one shout out on your behalf, and that is to your lovely wife, your partner who made you that tea. Is there anybody you would like to mention to say hi to?
Oh, yeah. Yes. My very dear friend who lives in the UK, his name is B. Parashar.
Okay.
I guess it would be wonderful to say hi. Hi, Bisajit. Hi, B.
Wonderful. Yeah, and so you can get him to listen to when this gets released, and then you can. Okay, yes. And one thing I also want to thank you, because your time is precious and everything like that, is that you're very, very generous of your time on social media, and you interact with people who try to talk to you, which is lovely. So I don't know if I'm inviting more people to descend on you here, Adil, but how can people connect with you on social media?
No, just DM me, because my DM is open. I kept it open in order to be in touch with people, and I choose to reply to sensible questions, and and whoever wants to get in touch with me, my Instagram is open, Facebook Messenger is open. Yeah, I do that.
On Twitter, yeah, so you're at _Adil Hussain on Twitter, and that's how we got connected. Yeah,
Instagram is the @_Adil Hussain.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. So, but you don't know what you're letting yourself in for, because geography teachers can be very inquisitive, and if you get a flood of DMs from geography teachers, Adil, you can blame Kit for that.
Okay. I'm looking forward.
Adil, this has been such a delight, such a pleasure. Thank you so much for spending the time with me, and I'll just end by saying namaste.
Namaste to you too.
Thank you so much for listening. We hope you had fun. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe so more stories and experiences can drop into your favourite podcast app. If you fancy being a guest or have any feedback, follow us on Twitter at coffeegeogpod and send us a DM. Or you could email coffeeandgeog@geogramblings.com. Until next time, keep geogging.